This program is performed by James Doohan with Leonard Nimoy as the voice of Spock.
The Mountains of Gaul, 155622, Vulcan, old date. I'm standing on a small stone balcony, watching the sunset paint the desert plain scarlet. Nearby, to the east, is Mount Salea, the tallest peak in the Gaul chain. This peak stands alone on the horizon, for in every other direction the land is a barren plain. The desert is eerily silent. It has lain undisturbed except for the period thousands of years ago when the followers of Kolinar came and carved this retreat in the mountain. The view from this particular balcony no doubt looked the same to some other pilgrim 2 millennia before. The desert remains unchanged. Such is not true for me. I have come here because my life has taken an unexpected direction. I have become a student in Kolinar, the path of total non-emotion. The years I spent among humans had corrupted me, caused me to become complacent about perfecting my control. Several months earlier, when the Enterprise's 5-year mission ended, submitting to the stringent discipline of Kolinar was the farthest thing from my mind. But recent events had led me here, to the mountains of Gaul. It took the death of another, a death for which I am responsible, to bring me here, to make me realize how tenuous and faulty was the control I had over my mind and emotions. As I recall both the recent and distant pasts, I witness a rare sight in the desert, a ghost rain. A single steel-colored cloud advances and begins to spill rain in huge drops. They evaporate in the hot, dry air a meter above the lifeless soil.
2,000 years earlier, in the mountains of Gaul, 140015, Vulcan old date. Zakal spent the first half of the night coughing up green-black blood and listening to the wind hurl sand against the mountain fortress. The cavernous chamber in which he lay dying was windowless and dark, but he had seen enough sandstorms to picture this one clearly in his mind's eye. A huge, vibrating column of red sand that blotted out the sky until nothing remained but moving desert. Any creatures foolish enough to venture unprotected into the storm would be found the next day, their mummified bodies leached of all moisture, their skin crackling like parchment at the slightest touch. Around the middle of the night, the stains on Zakal's handcloth changed from dark green to bright, and the healer who had nursed him for several days left him, both signs that he would be dead before sunrise. The relief on the healer's drawn face was evident. She had attended her patient with loathing and terror. For this was Zakal the Terrible, the greatest of all the Kolinar masters. With a mind so powerful, he had twice used it to incinerate his enemies into ashes at his feet. After she was gone, Zakal closed his eyes and smiled wanly. It was fitting to lie here and listen to the wind roar on the last night of his life. He had been born in a storm like this, and so his mother named him Zakal, the Fury, the Desert Storm. He was drowsing off when an image jolted him awake. His former student, Kotan, the new High Master, wrapped in his black traveling cloak. Koteth was crossing the desert. Zakal knew this despite the 3 initiates in the next chamber who stood guard, not over his aged dying body, but over a far more dangerous weapon, his mind. Even their combined efforts to shield the truth from him could not sever his link to the man he had raised as his own son, designated as his successor and now despised as his mortal enemy. Koteth had sensed his old master's impending death and would be here well before dawn. And so, hours later, when Koteth's words drew Zakal from a feverish reverie, they brought no surprise.
Master, I have come.
Zakal turned his face toward the black stone wall.
I may be your prisoner, but you cannot tell me when to die. There is time yet. Leave me, Koteth.
My name is no longer Koteth, Master. I have changed it to Zotek in honor of Surak.
The young Vulcan drew back the hood of his cloak, scattering rust-colored sand. As a child, Koteth had been a prodigy of the secret arts, devouring everything Zakal dared teach him. Zakal had, early on, glimpsed the unpleasant truth. Koteth would someday surpass his teacher. Zakal designated the lad as his successor, according to the old saying, if you cannot defeat your enemy, bring him into your camp. But Zakal had never suspected that Koteth's talent would be wasted, perverted by the simple-minded philosophy of such a peace-loving coward as Surak. Nor had he expected that Surak's teachings would flourish and gain so many followers, while his, Zakal's, would die out.
Zakal hissed, Zotek. What kind of a name is that for a Vulcan? And what do your followers call themselves now? Sirak, Sorak? And how many Suraks altogether? How long can this last? Until you run out of names for your children? Koteth, how can you bear to see your old teacher like this, knowing that they do not permit me to ease my pain?
The trace of a hardened smile crossed Koteth's features. To permit you access to any of the mind rules would be foolish, Master. I have seen you kill without mercy or guilt. Given the chance, you would murder me without a second's hesitation.
Zakal's features twisted with contempt. Now you would. That is why you are here. To kill. Not my body, but my spirit. You have come to deny me the second life.
You misunderstand, Master.
Zakal watched as the folds of Koteth's cloak parted. The young Vulcan's hands drew forth a shimmering globe.
I have come to keep the promise I made so long ago.
Zakal's dimming eyes widened at the sight of the Vrekatra, the receptacle in which his spirit would rest for eternity. He felt a small thread of surprise, for he had expected his new High Master to deny him the Vrekatra. It was the only way to ensure Zakal's secrets would be forever lost, safe from Surak's enemies. Koteth brought the glowing orb a step closer to the dying Vulcan.
I will confess, Master, that at first I considered setting your Katra upon the winds. But I am bound to keep my vow to you. And I need all of your knowledge if I am to defeat those who fight Surak.
Zakal coughed into his handcloth and watched the blood stain spread through the fabric.
Surak's vision of peace is a childish fantasy. All creatures must prey on others and compete among themselves. This is the way of all life. Surak would have us deny what we are. He will fail, and his followers will come to their senses. Many of them have already turned against him.
Koteth's eyes searched his old master's face for a reaction as he spoke.
Most of those who disagree with Surak are leaving Vulcan so that Surak may be successful. Even they acknowledge the folly of more strife, more fighting. In this way, Vulcan will be spared a civil war.
Zakal gasped, enraged by the thought of such cowardice.
Leaving Vulcan?
12,000 are preparing for the journey on the first ship. More will follow.
Overwhelmed by bitterness, Zakal struggled to sit and found he could not.
So, the planet is in the hands of sheep, while true Vulcans surrender their birthright. I swear to you, before the elements, were I free, I would convince these cowards to stay and fight. I would kill Surak myself.
I know that, Master. That is why I have taken care that your Katra does not fall into the wrong hands.
Koteth held out the globe.
It is time.
Zakal tried to shriek, but his words came out a whisper.
No, I will not be used to help Surak.
Master, would you rather see all of your knowledge scattered on the winds? This, Koteth nodded at the shining Vrekatra. This is your destiny. Zakal began to choke furiously, spraying blood in all directions. Suddenly, a gentle force propelled him into a sitting position. Koteth was next to him, holding him up. The Vrekatra sat at the foot of the bed.
I can force you, Master, but I will not. If you wish to join the elements, I will not prevent you. Your knowledge would be most useful to me, but I can find a way to defeat Surak's foes without it.
Eyes closed, Zakal lay against Koteth's strong arm and used the last moments of his life to consider his choices. Utter annihilation or eternal life on the mental plane. And Zakal was far too selfish to contemplate non-existence. He sighed. The Vrekatra. As Koteth pressed cool fingers against the desert-hot flesh of his master's forehead, Zakal's last thought inside his body was,
I shall have revenge upon you, Surak, for stealing my pupil, my city, my world from me. I shall have my revenge if I have to wait 2,000 years.
Zakal's eyes dulled. His frail body shuddered as it released a final breath. Gently, Koteth removed his fingers from his master's forehead, then placed them on the shimmering globe. The Vrekatra brightened fiercely. Outside, the wind stilled.
2,000 years later, space dock, Earth. Stardate 6987.31. Jim Kirk sat in the captain's chair on the bridge and watched as space dock gradually grew larger, rotating slowly on its axis like a gigantic burnished metal top. Beyond it, suspended in the void of space, hung a marbled blue-white sphere, Earth. The Enterprise was coming home. The past few days, as the ship drew closer to its final destination, Kirk alternated between regret and restlessness. He refused to admit that it was fear, yet there it was, full-blown, irrational, waking him in the night to stare up at the darkness. The feeling that what was most important to him, the command of the Enterprise, was on the verge of slipping through his fingers. Not that he would let it. Kirk kept his gaze on the screen as he said, "Lieutenant Uhura, advise approach control, please." Uhura leaned over her station and spoke into the grid. "Approach control. This is the USS Enterprise, ready for docking maneuver." Her voice was calm and steady, but Kirk felt the anticipation that permeated the bridge. Even Spock quit pretending to be busy at the science station and swiveled in his chair to stare frankly at their destination. The response signal was strong, clean of interstellar static at such close range. "Enterprise, you are cleared to dock at Bay 13. Welcome home." The Enterprise slowed as she approached space dock and assumed a spiral orbit until she reached the huge hangar doors that shielded Bay 13 from the radiation of space. As the ship neared, the hangar door silently parted. The Enterprise glided easily into the massive bay. Kirk rose, his eyes still watching the screen. "Mr. Sulu, activate moorings and disengage engines." "Moorings activated, Captain." "Engines disengaged." Enterprise's 5-year mission was now officially over. To Kirk, it seemed anticlimactic. He was confused by his own reaction to arriving home. He should have been exhilarated, or at the very least, relieved. Instead, he felt an oddly nagging disappointment. He leaned down and pressed the toggle switch for the shipwide intercom. "This is the captain. Let me be the first to congratulate all of you on a safe arrival home. I am proud to have served with the best damn crew in the fleet. My commendations to all of you. Tomorrow at 0900, Admiral Morrow will conduct a review. Until then, let the Fire Watch festivities commence." He snapped off the intercom and was about to get to his feet when the entire bridge crew rose as one and applauded solemnly. All except Spock, who nevertheless rose, his expression grave, but managing to convey that although he did not follow the custom, he agreed with the sentiment. Kirk raised a hand for silence. The applause thinned. "Please, not for me. For those who didn't make it back." The second round of applause was restrained. This time, Kirk joined in. The atmosphere aboard the ship was one of muted sadness in comparison to the previous day's gaiety. Most of the crew were gone now, so that the ship began to take on an empty, deserted feel. Jim Kirk stepped, suitcase in hand, from his quarters into the corridor and very nearly collided with his first officer. "Spock! I thought you were already gone." Dressed in civilian clothes, the Vulcan paused.
his expression guarded. "I was just leaving, Captain. However, I must admit that I am curious as to—" Kirk raised his free hand to interrupt. "That seems to be a characteristic of yours, Mr. Spock. Let me guess. You came to ask about my conversation with Admiral Nagura." "Yes, I understand he contacted you yesterday afternoon." Tensely, Kirk nodded. "He did. He's putting pressure on me to accept the Admiralty, Spock. He asked me why I didn't want a promotion, and I told him. I even threatened to quit the service. He asked me to reconsider. Told me to take time and think it over while I'm on leave." "Will you, Captain?" Kirk shook his head firmly, his lips thinning at the thought. "No. I promise you this, Spock. If I have to resign my commission, then damn it, I will. I'm not giving up the Enterprise. And my answer will be the same after 6 months' leave." Spock's expression and voice were carefully neutral. "I see. And what about you, Spock? I hope you'll consider taking command of the Grissom. You know I recommended you." No, Captain, I have not yet reached a decision." "If that is all, sir, then I will wish you farewell." Kirk smiled grimly. "Not farewell, Spock. Goodbye, maybe, or till we meet again. We'll see each other in 6 months or so. Give my regards to your parents." "I shall. Goodbye, Jim. Take care, Spock." The Vulcan strode down the empty corridor, but Kirk did not watch him go. Instead, the captain took his suitcase and headed briskly in the opposite direction. He did not, he told himself firmly, feel at all sad to be leaving his first officer or the Enterprise. After all, it wasn't really goodbye.
I am lost in meditation, seated inside a small, dark stone cell. I am a guest here at the mountain retreat of Gaul. Although the pursuit of Kolinar holds no attraction for me, the calm serenity of the desert does. For I face a dilemma. Now that the Enterprise's 5-year mission has ended, I must make a choice, one that I had hoped never to make. I came to Gaul after receiving the startling news that James Kirk had been persuaded to accept the promotion to the Admiralty. I took it for a rumor, nothing more. But my call to Starfleet headquarters confirmed the impossible. There would be no chance to serve under Captain Kirk again. I was deeply shaken by the news. Perhaps it was illogical of me to expect a human to be logical, to keep his vow, never to accept the promotion. Yet I never considered the possibility that Kirk would not do as he had sworn. After all, the captain has always acted most reliably. For a human. I remember Kirk's solemn promise that he would never give up the Enterprise, even if it meant leaving the Starfleet. At the time, I took him at his word. Indeed, I wanted to believe him. For the Enterprise was my home, her crew, my family. As Kirk's first officer, I felt I had at last found the one place in the universe where I belonged, where I could be accepted for who and what I am. Now, that place is gone. At the thought of Kirk's promotion, I feel a keen sense of betrayal. Its intensity surprises me. So too does my difficulty in choosing among my remaining options. I had requested to serve under Kirk again. Instead, Starfleet offered me a promotion to captain of the research vessel Grissom. I find the offer disappointing, as I have no desire to serve as captain myself. I am a scientist, and a captain's duties do not permit the luxury of scientific research. As if anticipating my dilemma, the Vulcan Science Academy offered me a research position upon my arrival home. In the tradition of my ancestors, I came here, to the mountain retreat of Gaul, to make a decision. And tradition seems curiously fitting. For the first time in my adult life, I am considering living on my native planet, to be a Vulcan among Vulcans. I feared returning home because I doubted I would be welcome. Yet all that has happened since my return points to the fact that I am indeed accepted for what I am. My home in Starfleet has evaporated. My place is here now on Vulcan. The cruelty and rejection of children drove me to Starfleet, but I am an adult now, and so are the children who once tormented me. Perhaps we have all grown in wisdom. And so, I have come to a decision. I shall leave Starfleet and make my home on Vulcan.
Spock's attention returned to the present as a voice called softly outside the stone door of his cell. Spock rose to his feet with a single, graceful motion. "Come." The student entered. Spock barely glanced at him. The Kolinar students waited on the retreat guests. This one had come to remove the supper dishes. But as the student picked up the bowl and glided silently toward the door, something made Spock take a second look. He had seen this Vulcan before when he was much younger, with anger etched on his broad, square-jawed face. "Zakal! It is I, Spock." Zakal turned slowly and regarded him with an implacable expression, as Spock tried to suppress the surge of warmth that directed itself at his old friend. The child Zakal had come to his defense some 35 years ago, silencing the bullies who had challenged Spock as an outsider, as an earther who had no business claiming his Vulcan heritage. Spock experienced an impulse to thank Zakal for his help after all these years, and reflected grimly that he had spent far too much time among humans. Zakal wore the simple white robe of a student postulant. He had not yet undergone the ritual, and was at the point where he was trying to break all emotional ties to others. "You have been gone a long time, Spock. Have you come back among us to stay?" "Yes, but what of you, Zakal? Do you undergo the ritual soon?" Sakar's hesitation was palpable. An unidentifiable flicker of emotion lit his eyes for an instant, and then faded. Strangely, it was not friendship Spock perceived, but something closer to fear. "Yes, Spock. Within a week's time." Even more curiously, Spock got the odd impression that Zakal did not want to hear the question that would follow. Yet it was unavoidable now. "May I come to take my leave of you before the ritual, Zakal?" Tradition dictated that Spock ask the question. Taking one's leave of a Kolinar postulant was a time-honored custom. The ritual allowed the student to sever all ties to the past, to make the transition to Kolinar easier for him. By asking the question, Spock extended Zakal a courtesy. Yet Zakal seemed reluctant to reply, almost as if he feared completing the ritual. Though Spock assured himself he was mistaken, the question hung unanswered for a time, and then Zakal replied, "Of course. Come in 6 days' time. On the 7th, I join with the High Master." He bowed. "Welcome home, Spock." Spock returned the gesture. "I shall return in 6 days to take my leave." Days later, at the Vulcan Science Academy, Leonard McCoy nodded at the applause. He loosened his grip on the podium. Beneath his trembling hands, the ink on his handwritten notes had smeared. Dr. Caradwin Llewellyn, the other speaker for the evening, stood beside him on the platform and applauded enthusiastically.